Welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the heart-pounding drama of your favorite daytime residents. Today is a brilliant day to unravel the darkest corners of Genoa City's elite, as we explore a masterclass in vengeance that is currently unfolding in the neon-lit shadows. Let us step directly into the chaos that threatens to shatter a legacy forever. The glittering, neon-soaked facade of Las Vegas has always served as a playground for the wealthy and the wicked, a place where fortunes are made and lives are destroyed with the flip of a card. Yet, beneath the intoxicating allure of the Strip, a far more sinister game is being played, one orchestrated by a ghost from the past whose thirst for vengeance knows no bounds. Matt Clark, a man whose very name evokes decades of trauma and terror for the Newman family, has meticulously set a trap that defies imagination. His grand design is not merely about inflicting physical pain. It is a psychological masterpiece designed to dismantle the very foundation of Victor Newman's legacy. The subterranean basement where this nightmare is unfolding stands in stark contrast to the bright lights above, a damp, suffocating concrete tomb where the sins of the past have finally come to collect their devastating toll. Adam Newman, a man who has spent his entire life mastering the art of manipulation and control, finds himself entirely outmatched in this subterranean nightmare. Driven by a frantic need to uncover the truth behind Matt's horrifying claim that Nick had succumbed to a fatal overdose, Adam willingly descended into the darkness. He believed he could outsmart Matt, relying on his inherent Newman arrogance and his history of navigating dangerous underworlds. However, every step he took down that dimly lit staircase was a step further into a meticulously crafted web. The heavy silence of the basement pressed against him, a stark warning that his usual tactics of intimidation and negotiation would be utterly useless here. Adam's heart, usually guarded by layers of cynicism, pounded with an uncharacteristic dread, driven by a primal, brotherly instinct that he had spent years trying to deny. The moment the heavy metal door creaked open, the horrific reality of the situation slammed into Adam with the force of a physical blow. The dim, flickering light of the basement revealed a sight that would forever be seared into his memory. There, lying motionless on the cold, unforgiving concrete floor, was his brother. Nick Newman, the golden son, the resilient protector of his family, was bound tightly, his body completely unresponsive. The sheer shock of seeing Nick reduced to this vulnerable state shattered the decades of bitter rivalry and animosity that had defined their relationship. In that agonizing fraction of a second, Adam was not a corporate rival or a bitter outcast. He was simply a brother terrified of losing his blood. The overwhelming surge of panic and desperation propelled Adam forward, abandoning all caution and situational awareness as he dropped to his knees beside Nick's motionless form. Driven entirely by adrenaline and fear, Adam leaned over his brother, his trembling fingers reaching out to find a pulse, desperate for any sign of life. This singular moment of profound vulnerability, this genuine display of familial love, was exactly what Matt Clark had been waiting for. Lurking in the suffocating shadows, Matt watched with a sickening sense of triumph as the mighty Adam Newman lowered his defenses. With the calculated precision of a predator, Matt emerged from the darkness, wielding a heavy metal fire extinguisher. The sheer brutality of what happened next was a testament to Matt's unhinged hatred. He swung the heavy cylinder with devastating force, bringing it crashing down onto the back of Adam's head. The sickening thud echoed through the damp basement, a sound of absolute, violent finality. The impact was catastrophic, sending a shockwave of agonizing pain through Adam's skull before the world instantly dissolved into a terrifying, suffocating blackness. He collapsed heavily onto the concrete, his body falling limply beside the brother he had desperately tried to save. Standing over the fallen Newman heirs, Matt Clark experienced a surge of euphoric, sadistic satisfaction that had been decades in the making. He had done the impossible. He had brought the untouchable sons of Victor Newman to their knees, rendering them entirely helpless in his domain. The sheer magnitude of his victory was intoxicating. He meticulously went to work, utilizing heavy, unforgiving chains to bind Adam alongside Nick, ensuring that when they finally awoke from their violent slumber, they would find themselves inextricably linked in their suffering. The heavy metal door slammed shut, the lock engaging with a loud, echoing clank, sealing the brothers in their subterranean purgatory. While the Newman brothers lay unconscious and bound in the suffocating darkness, a different kind of torture was unfolding miles away in a sterile, silent hotel room. Chelsea Lawson, left behind when Adam departed with Matt, was trapped in an agonizing purgatory of waiting. The silence of the room was deafening, every tick of the clock amplifying her creeping dread. Chelsea's mind, honed by years of surviving the grifter lifestyle and navigating the treacherous waters of Genoa City, began to race. She replayed the chilling encounter with Matt, analyzing his facial expressions, his tone of voice, and the horrific story he had spun about Nick's supposed fatal overdose. The pieces of the puzzle began to shift, forming a terrifying picture of deception. She knew Adam, she knew his capabilities, and the fact that he had not returned or communicated sent a freezing wave of terror crashing over her. The realization that Matt's story was a lethal lure struck Chelsea with paralyzing clarity. She understood, with a sickening certainty, that Adam had walked directly into a masterfully disguised trap. The sheer vulnerability of her situation began to suffocate her. She was alone in a city of strangers, entirely exposed to a psychopath who had just successfully vanished with two of the most powerful men she knew. The terrifying possibility that Matt might return to the hotel room loomed over her like a dark cloud. Would he come back to gloat, delivering a villainous monologue to revel in his absolute victory? Or worse, would he return to collect her, adding another piece to his twisted collection of Newman-adjacent hostages? The agonizing uncertainty gnawed at her sanity, leaving her pacing the floor, her heart hammering violently against her ribs. Driven to the absolute brink of panic, Chelsea realized she could not face this nightmare alone. Her trembling hands reached for her phone, her fingers struggling to dial the one person who needed to know the horrifying truth. The one person whose history with Matt Clark was as dark and traumatic as the current situation. She initiated the call to Sharon Newman, a decision that would send shockwaves all the way back to Genoa City. When the line connected, Chelsea's voice was fractured by terror as she relayed the devastating sequence of events. She explained Matt's sudden, chilling appearance, his horrifying claim that Nick had succumbed to a fatal painkiller overdose, and the terrifying reality that Adam had left to investigate and subsequently vanish without a trace. Chelsea poured her heart out, detailing Adam's lingering suspicions about Nick's vulnerability, painting a grim picture of a rescue mission gone catastrophically wrong. Thousands of miles away, in the familiar, comforting surroundings of Genoa City, Sharon Newman received the call that would instantly shatter her world. The mere mention of Matt Clark's name was a psychological earthquake, triggering a violent resurgence of deeply buried trauma. Matt was not just a villain to Sharon, he was the architect of her darkest nightmares, a monster who had previously subjected her to unimaginable terror and abuse. Hearing that this ghost from her past had resurfaced and currently held the fate of the father of her children in his twisted hands sent Sharon into a spiral of visceral, suffocating panic. The horrifying narrative Chelsea provided regarding Nick's supposed overdose and Adam's disappearance ignited a fierce, protective inferno within Sharon's soul. The maternal and wifely instincts that had defined her existence roared to life, entirely consuming her fear. Sharon's reaction was immediate and explosive. The protective fury of a mother and a woman who had survived the worst life had to offer took absolute control. There was no room for hesitation, no time for careful planning. She knew with absolute certainty that she had to get to Las Vegas. The gravitational pull of the crisis was undeniable, drawing the extended Newman family into its destructive orbit. The news spread with terrifying speed, reaching Noah and Sienna, who were instantly compelled to follow Sharon into the heart of the danger. The prospect of Noah rushing to save his father added another agonizing layer of complexity to the unfolding tragedy. The Newman family, usually divided by corporate squabbles and internal betrayals, was suddenly united by a singular, terrifying purpose, hurtling toward a destination that promised nothing but pain and revelation. As the Genoa City contingent desperately mobilized, the dynamics within Matt Clark's Las Vegas stronghold were shifting in dangerous and unpredictable ways. Riza Thompson, a woman whose life had been irrevocably altered by Adam's sweet words and false promises, found herself standing at a perilous crossroads. She had initially collaborated with the man she knew as Ronnie, entirely unaware of his true identity as the psychotic Matt Clark. When Adam had exposed Matt's true, terrifying nature, Riza had been paralyzed by a profound, suffocating fear. She had witnessed firsthand the chilling extent of Matt's capabilities, the sheer ruthlessness with which he targeted the powerful Newman family. Yet, amidst the terror, a complex and dangerous emotional storm was brewing within her. Despite feeling profoundly used and manipulated by Adam, a lingering, undeniable attraction to him continued to cloud her judgment. In the quiet, tense moments following Matt's departure to secure the brothers, Riza engaged in a fierce internal debate. The allure of power and survival presented a tempting, intoxicating fantasy. She entertained the dangerous hope that by aligning herself with Adam, she could somehow facilitate Matt's downfall. In her desperate mind, she envisioned a scenario where Adam, grateful for her intervention, would help her eliminate the psychotic threat of Matt Clark, leaving her to seize total control of the entire Las Vegas operation. It was a seductive thought, a vision of ascending from a manipulated pawn to a reigning queen of the underworld. However, this fragile fantasy was continuously assaulted by the bitter, agonizing sting of Adam's betrayal. The knowledge that he had viewed her merely as a disposable tool in his grand rescue mission burned like acid in her soul. This internal conflict, this agonizing tug-of-war between lingering affection and profound, destructive heartbreak, was the fulcrum upon which the entire situation balanced. Riza held the power to change the course of the nightmare, to be the unexpected savior in a subterranean hell. Yet, the deep-seated wounds of betrayal are often more powerful than the fragile bonds of hope. The horrifying reality of what was to come hinged entirely on which path Riza would ultimately choose. Would she succumb to the terrifying intimidation of Matt Clark, heeding his dark warnings against betrayal? Or would the burning desire for revenge against the man who broke her heart push her into becoming an instrument of torture herself? The psychological tightrope she walked was as dangerous as the physical trap that held the Newman brothers, a testament to the destructive power of a scorned heart. Matt Clark's grand, malevolent design was not merely content with capturing the brothers. His vision of vengeance was far more expansive and cruel. He possessed the terrifying patience of a spider waiting in the center of its web, fully aware that the capture of Nick and Adam would act as an irresistible beacon for the rest of the family. He anticipated the frantic arrival of Chelsea, the desperate charge of Sharon, and the protective fury of Noah. In Matt's twisted, sadistic mind, the subterranean basement was not just a prison, it was a stage where he intended to gather all his enemies, locking them together in a confined space like fish in a barrel. He wanted to look upon the entirety of the Newman legacy, stripped of their wealth and power, reduced to terrified, helpless victims entirely at his mercy. The sheer arrogance of his plan was matched only by its horrifying potential for absolute devastation. As the impending arrival of the rescue party loomed closer, the atmosphere in the basement grew increasingly suffocating. When Nick and Adam finally regained consciousness, the agonizing reality of their situation would set in. The heavy chains binding them to the concrete floor were physical manifestations of their past failures and present vulnerabilities. The throbbing pain in Adam's head from the brutal strike of the fire extinguisher would be a constant, agonizing reminder of his fatal miscalculation. They were entirely isolated, stripped of their resources, and forced to confront not only the sadistic monster who had captured them but also the complex, fractured history of their own brotherhood. The dark, damp walls of their prison offered no solace, only the terrifying promise that their nightmare was just beginning, and that the people they loved most were hurtling directly into the exact same trap. There is a profound, almost suffocating sorrow in watching this magnificent tragedy unfold, a deep emotional resonance in witnessing the absolute deconstruction of these powerful figures. To see the Newman brothers, men who have moved financial mountains and dictated the fates of empires, reduced to chained, bleeding mortals on a damp concrete floor, is a stark reminder of the fragility of power. It evokes a visceral, empathetic ache to observe the sheer desperation of their loved ones, the frantic, terrified scramble of Chelsea and Sharon as they hurl themselves toward a danger they cannot possibly comprehend. This narrative is a haunting exploration of the inescapable nature of consequence, a tragic symphony where the sins of the past return not just to haunt, but to violently destroy. The emotional weight of their collective suffering is a heavy, lingering presence, a testament to the enduring, destructive cycle of vengeance that defines their interconnected lives. As the neon lights of Las Vegas continue to blink with an indifferent, mocking rhythm, the subterranean tomb awaits its next victims. With Sharon, Noah, and Sienna racing toward the danger, and Riza teetering on the edge of a devastating moral collapse, the stage is set for a confrontation of apocalyptic proportions. Will the combined strength of the Newman family be enough to shatter Matt Clark's impenetrable web of vengeance, or will they all be swallowed by the darkness he has so meticulously prepared? The ticking clock echoes through the empty hotel rooms and the damp basement walls, promising that the ultimate reckoning is mere moments away. You will not want to miss a single second of the impending explosion, as the battle for survival in the shadows of Sin City reaches its most terrifying crescendo.